everybody, and welcome to everybody here with me and far away in remote connection. The round table takes the advantage to have together experts in our themes of today, as well as representatives of ongoing projects that we like to present and that we briefly reported in the abstract that I think you had the occasion to read. I'm one of these representatives. My name is Andrea Rismondo, and the company where I work is a partner of SASPAS, which is an Interreg project in the framework of the Italy-Croatia program. The Monfalcone Municipality asked me to moderate and to give the start to the meeting. So I would like to introduce now the other participants of the table. I know that my role is boring for you and for participation, so I'll try to be short, even because I'll be also presenting one of the project. So my moderator role, I try to keep it very low. So, Professor Tatiana Baccaran-Petriccioli comes from the Faculty of Science of Zagreb University, is one of the components of the roundtable. She's a marine scientist, and we will discuss with her looking for a short overview of the situation in Adriatic of marine benthic habitats from the marine biologist point of view, not forgetting the fact and the aspects and the pressure against the biotic components as we have treated in the two projects that you'll see with some slides in a few minutes. We have here in the room Dr. Mitja Brithel. Is coming from a long series, I would say, of institutional and ministerial position in Slovenia, even of peak value. Presently in the Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning Office. It's a long series of tasks, so I had to prepare a couple of lines, Dr. Brithel, about this. Let me emphasize his position in the EU's EUSAIR in Italian strategy for the Adriatic-Ionian area, where he plays a role, an important role in the environmental issues, environmental pillar, to use a good term. I only want to say here that the objective of this net, of this EUSAIR, concern many aspects of economic, social, scientific advancement. It's obvious that we cannot divide these themes from the environmental quality and from the natural conservations, even if sometimes this is seen, this is read as a possible perspective slowdown of competitiveness. And this is one of the questions of today. Finally, I want to mention Alberto Barausse and Manzardo. Barausse will be also presenting something in a few minutes. Presenting because his group, University of Padova, is a partner, one of the partners of EcoSmart, an Italian-Slovenian project of this program. His expertise comes from the conservation, management of coastal and estuarine habitats, environments, and the evaluation of the so-called ecosystem services. Having made this little presentation, just a few lines about how to address the discussion on our themes, let me remind a few starting points we have prepared together, and to present our project and the connected matters, we start from our main title, which is Protection of Marine Habitats and Reduction of CO2 along Coastal Areas, Scientific and Social Aspects, I read here. More concretely, declinating our themes, we can speak of protection, use and enhancement of Adriatic marine coastal habitats, from ecosystem services to mitigation and adaptation to climate change. So coming to the point, the EU program supports a series of projects in the framework of test and establish concrete measures for the protection of the coastal habitats. The purpose, what is the purpose, is to quantify the natural capital of these habitats, to evaluate and perform actions for their conservation and for their use. These experiences in some way can also be reproposed in other contexts, maybe Mediterranean, to fight the coastal erosion, loss of coastal wetlands, coastal valuable habitats, and in the bottom line of biodiversity. As an example, you'll see in a few minutes, we're facing this issue working with marine seagrasses. As you'll see later, these will be done through the safeguard activities of repopulation, repositioning of, for example, of eco-friendly buoy systems to avoid anchoring pressures. These approaches may also concern elsewhere areas of conservation interest adjacent to port context, for example, those with considerable traffic, those who pose, as you can reasonably understand, particular impacts against natural habitats. I have to mention in this framework the Smooth Port project that the Monfalcone Municipality itself is participating to. And a key factor, to finish, to raise awareness among the various stakeholders and also to the public, to the users, to the boaters, to the tourists, in order to use the coastal resources in an increasingly sustainable way and to implement strategies for adaptation to climate change. Having said this, I asked to the participant to the roundtable if they want to say something before to pass to the presentation, the topic presentation. So I'm speaking to Professor Bakran, to Dr. Barause, and to Dr. Brithel. Is there a way to see them? Very good. Good morning again. Good afternoon, sorry. Would you like to intervene, or can we go on with the presentations? Dr. Brithel?
I think we should go with the presentations.
Very good. Dr. Brithel?
Yes, I agree very much. Thank you.
So I asked to put my presentation, please. And if it's possible, can I work with it? I go directly, okay. So the case of the SASPAS Interreg project, the project as a partnership with the logos you can see. The lead partner is the Municipality of Monfalcone, and then there's a number of partners, institutional, governatives, and academic. I would like to highlight the presence of the Cornati National Park public institution, which is a park or an archipelago of great interest from the natural point of view, but which call the attention of the increasing number of tourists. And this is one of the issues and one of the themes of today. The project, SASPAS, is a project that aims to preserve and get a better status of conservation in the Adriatic Sea ecosystem in order to decrease its vulnerability, which is the overall objective, is to improve the seagrass preservation and restoration through placing safe anchorage innovative systems, performing pilot transplantation, and with a number of monitoring activities, and at the end, defining an integrated management system. We can say, for the simple way, that SASPAS mainly focuses on the possibility of convincing boaters, tourists, on the use of eco-friendly buoys instead of anchoring directly on seagrasses beds. The project consists so in the practical application of techniques through the development of joint innovative solutions. SASPAS is not a research project in the sense we can feel, because it goes to practical procedures, as I said, to test the efficiency of ecobuoy system, includes work on location and survey of appropriate sites where to intervene in such a way, to study the practical feasibility of ecobuoy system application, testing of advanced transplanting methods, and a number of activities which deal with the permitting pathway, we could say, to arrive to the possibility to test these systems. We'll see that this last point is important. So, layer of safe anchorage, pilot marine seagrass transplantation of Posidonia oceanica, which represents the high-value topic species of the coastal Adriatic ecosystem, at least in the Croatian littorals and in the southern Italy Adriatic coast. A sustainable tourist use of the natural resources, and proposing a management in a very simple key, a model for Posidonia and the other marine seagrasses. I can mention Cymbodosia nodosa, which is typical of embayment, protected areas, even with incurrent sediments. A management model, I was saying, for the Adriatic coast concerning the conservation and safeguard against the anchoring impacts. So we have 3 sites where we're walking: the Bay of Panzano, not far from here, in Monfalcone, Gulf of Trieste; the Regional Natural Park of Coastal Dunes, southern Italy, a yellow circle near Brindisi, and the Cornati National Park in Dalmatia. So the idea is that the ecological buoys placement, which is not an innovation, if you have an idea of the Mediterranean tests, there being some of these tray in Spain, little in France, some spots in Sardinia, Corsica, but it's just a question of what the local port decide, and there's not a global overall management of this possibility. And above all, there's not a pressure, if I can use this term, to stimulate the boaters in this sense, protecting Posidonia, defining areas where it's advisable to use eco-friendly buoy instead of using anchoring of the boats, which can result in damaging the meadows. And then, as a second activity, subordinate activity, some pilot transplantation of Posidonia oceanica or of Cibodosia nodosa, whereas it's suitable, in places where some regression occurred due to a human pressure. Again, we have to highlight the position of Posidonia oceanica and the habitat of Posidonia oceanica, which is of communitary importance, being listed as the 1120 habitats. Then there is how can I say, there is a system of, in order to develop a system of management for the seagrass through a digital platform and a management program, in order to give a way to management bodies and public access to private users, giving information regarding the ecologically mooring anchoring points, the type of mooring, the type of boat, and to start a system of information about the presence of Posidonia and what means the Posidonia habitats, the plant and the connected species and habitats. This phase, the concluding phase of the project, will include guidelines for the protection of the marine seagrasses from traffic, mooring, the anchoring, trying to integrate and spread the results of SASPAS and of the concrete actions of SASPAS for the entire valuable coastal areas in the Adriatic Sea, at least in a conceptual framework. This is just to show you the organization of a project and some photos of the idea for the preservation of the habitat and the importance of the buoys to preserve the seagrass meadows, whereas sometimes they are used, like in the figures top on the right, or anchoring on the meadows, like in the photos on the left. This is an example, a map of the Monfalcone site. This is just a short video of the first activities in Monfalcone, when we started to make the monitoring, the survey, let's say preliminary survey. If you are a practical Posidonia, here the situation is a little bit different with Cibodosia, with an environment which is different. We'll see the difference in a few minutes, but as you can see, the meadows is thick, dense, and widespread. This is Monfalcone from above. This is the Cornati part. The archipelago of Cornati is more or less in front of Zadar. A huge number of bigger and smaller islands. linear littoral of Brindisi, with Posidonia as well. Obviously, the pressure of boaters here is much is less than in the National Park of Corneti, which represent, I could say, the top of the use by the boaters. Here's an example of the anchoring, free anchoring of boats and on the marinas of the archipelago. Some photos of the monitoring, a video of the monitoring phase. Just a few seconds. Just to introduce you to the environment and to the, as you can see, the turbidity is a little bit less than before. You can see the Posidonia with all the epiphytes which colonize the leaves. And the older are the leaves, more epiphytes you have, obviously, because they have the time to colonize the leaf surface. Okay. Preliminary results traces problems and difficulties, as I was saying before. So some surveys are being completed, the sites analyzed, highlighting existing pressures and impacts. Fishing, boaters, tourists, mercantile traffics, organization of concrete actions. We had some additional problems due to COVID-19, obviously, as you can imagine, but we experienced different problems because the first transplanting tests have been started, but we had a number of difficulties in the permitting to obtain the possibility to put the buoys, the possibility to enter different areas, because still it's difficult. It's very easy to implement and to carry out a simple research. It's less easy, much more complicated to organize practical activities. So if we speak with the Maritime Authority or with the county office or with other organization and agency which deal with this kind of activities for permits to access an area, to access with maybe a little pontoon to put the buoys and other things. So we are very practical in this because we have to think that each activity has some practical aspects to be solved. And this was a time loss which is affecting the process of a project. So because of the COVID and because of these difficulties, we had to postpone to 2021 the activities that were foreseen initially in this year. Just some acknowledgements of the helps and the supports we received. Thanks for this. The other project we are presenting of the Interreg program is the EcoSmart, and the presentation will be made by Dr. Barause. If I can pass the word to him.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So thank you for giving us the chance to present the project that we are working on at the University of Padova. I also bring the greetings of Alessandro Manzardo and the rest of my colleagues who work at the Department of Industrial Engineering at the University of Padova, Italy, which is my former department. Right now, I'm based at the Department of Biology, where I am a researcher on coastal ecosystems. And today, I will speak about this Interreg project, Italia-Slovenia. So a project funded by the European Regional Development Fund, which is called EcoSmart. And okay, it doesn't have, as far as I know, an official English name, but it might be something like Ecosystem Services Market for an Advanced Policy of Protection for Natura 2000 areas. And why this project? Yeah, the first keyword is climate change. We all know, we've seen it in these days, the climate is changing very drastically, very fast. And there have been several international actions, some you may see there, aimed at planning strategies and concrete actions to adapt to climate change. Adaptation means to try to foresee what the effects of climate will be, for example, on ecosystem or socioeconomic systems, and put in place measures to adapt to these changes. And of course, one key climate change impact is that on nature, so on biodiversity, on animal and vegetal species on land and on the sea, and on ecosystem as a whole. And in particular, in this project, we're interested in the ecological network of protected areas that's found in Europe, which is called Natura 2000 network. It's an ecological network of protected areas that was created back in 1992 through the Habitats Directive of the European Union. And in particular, we'll have a look at how climate change, in this project, is going to impact biodiversity, and so species and habitats in Natura 2000 areas along the coast of Italy and Slovenia, and how these impacts translate into changes in ecosystem services, which are the benefits, the concrete benefits that nature brings to society. And the point of this project, which is not a research project, it's an applied project, it's a governance project in a sense, will be to find adaptation measures in these coastal areas against climate change. So when we speak about climate change in the Mediterranean region, we speak about many changes. We all know about the fact that the planet is warming, and so air temperature is rising, and the same holds true for aquatic ecosystem, for water bodies. So water temperature, sea temperature is rising as well. And but there are other more subtle changes that are really important from an ecological and also socioeconomic, of course, perspective, such as the changes in the regime of precipitation. For example, we expect to have more droughts in the near future. We expect to have more heat waves, for example. The sea level, of course, is rising. We all know about this problem in the Mediterranean Sea. Think, for example, what happened in last autumn in Venice. The sea pH is changing, and all of these processes driven by climate change will have an impact on ecosystems, and in turn on ecosystem services, which are again the benefits that this ecosystem brings to society. And of course, these processes don't act in isolation. They can have synergistic effects. And so we have to adapt to these unprecedented changes that are taking place in our coasts. And so the question is, how can we adapt a territory, a region, and its complexity, which is made of social activities, economic activities, ecological processes, to these climate changes, which we cannot avoid? The answer lies, of course, in the so-called adaptation plans. And in this Interreg project, EcoSmart, we are going to find out how to use this payment for ecosystem services, PES mechanism, to fund basically adaptation plans to climate change in Natura 2000 areas along the Adriatic coast. So ecosystem services are the contribution of ecosystem structure and functions to human well-being, and according to the common international classification of ecosystem services, the CISIS, they can be classified in provisioning services. I just make a very brief examples to make it clear about what I'm speaking of. So provisioning services, for example, are production services. So ecosystem give us, for example, a marine ecosystem can give us fish. So we can get fish, a production service from the sea or from a lagoon. Cultural services, for example, ecosystem allow us to carry out tourism activities which bring benefits in terms of economic income, for example, to a territory. Regulation services are all those services that are connected to maintenance process in ecosystem. For example, ecosystems such as lagoons can naturally depurate, they can naturally clean water from pollutants and nutrients, and so they can naturally control water quality. This is a regulation service. And these payment for ecosystem services mechanisms so they have been defined as a transparent system for the provision of environmental services through conditional payments to voluntary providers. So in practice, they are a system of incentives of payments that are made to actors, to stakeholders of a certain region whose actions are useful to maintain ecosystem services. A classical example is that of farmers who do maintenance of ditches in an agricultural fields. Those ditches are very useful because they are basically a storage basement when in case of intense precipitation, which in case of intense precipitation can be used to reduce the flood risk because they can store precipitation water. So by maintaining the ditches in the agricultural field, farmers are maintaining an ecosystem service. So there are agro-environmental schemes in place in certain European countries through which farmers get some money in exchange for their maintenance activity of ditches in their fields. So payment for ecosystem services have been commonly applied, for example, in agriculture or in forest management, but there are very few applications in coastal areas such as the ones we're working on. So the general project objective of EcoSmart is to assess and test. So this is experimental in a sense, but it is applied in another sense. The economic feasibility to fund the protection of biodiversity and Natura 2000 sites in Italy and Slovenia through this pilot, because it's pilot, as I just said, application of paying for ecosystem services system. And so the project has begun quite recently. So I won't have many results. I won't actually speak a lot about results, but would rather speak about the strategy behind the project because I think it's useful for discussion that's going to happen next. As you see, it's quite an important project based on the budget, and it involves Italian and Slovenian partners. So we have 5 partners. The lead partner is the Veneto region, and there are other 2 Italian partners, so the city of Monfalcone and the Department of Industrial Engineering at the University of Padova. And there are 2 Slovenian partners, which is, one is the Copper Regional Development Center, and the other one is ZRS, which is a research institute, again, in copper. And there are associate partners, such as the Italian Ministry of Environment, USAIR, USALP, and the Natura 2000 network. So more specifically, the project aims at carrying out an assessment of climate change vulnerability of these 5 sites, which you see there, belonging to the Natura 2000 network, along the Adriatic coast. Most are in Italy, so we have the Caorle, Lagoon, and Tagliamento Mouth, Laguna 2000 site. We have the Tagliamento Mouth, which is different from the previous one. We have, and it's shown in the picture in this slide, the Valle Vecchia, Zumelle, Valle di Bibbione area. We have Cavana di Monfalcone in Friuli, Venezia, Giulia region. And in Slovenia, we have the natural reserve of Skocianski. I'm sure I didn't get the pronunciation right, so forgive me. And then what we're going to do in this project is to lay out an adaptation plan for climate change supported by the pilot application of paying for ecosystem services in 3 pilot areas. 2 must be in Italy and 1 in Slovenia. And then once we have find out a manner to apply this payment for ecosystem services scheme and tested it in practice, we will write down and divulgate harmonized procedures for the application of this paying for ecosystem services approach for the design and conservation of biodiversity in the Natura 2000 network in general. So, and I'm going to conclude. In my opinion, the project is in its initial stage, as I was saying. So what we're doing right now is to map the ecosystem services in these Natura 2000 sites. We are also identifying stakeholders, and we are also trying to develop an harmonized method, a systematic approach to identify how ecosystem services will be impacted by climate change. And once we find out the most impacted and most valuable ecosystem services, and we find out the right stakeholders, the right actors on the territory, we will develop a payment for ecosystem services scheme to involve stakeholders in the maintenance of these ecosystem services by protecting these Natura 2000 areas. So the most interesting project results, in my opinion, would be, of course, an improvement of the monitoring capacity, of our monitoring capacity of the impacts of climate change, and an improvement of our capability to plan measures to adapt and limit the impacts of climate change on the Natura 2000 network, of course, in Italy and Slovenia. But the second important point of this project is that we will test and apply a methodology which is innovative, because I was saying it's never been applied basically in practice, so with some exceptions, in coastal ecosystems, and which is the payment for ecosystem services scheme. And the third project result, which is, it may seem more subtle, but in my opinion it's not, is that these projects are actually an important chance to bring together different local actors, different local stakeholders, such as public bodies. We have the Veneto region, for example, in the project, but also private actors, which we are identifying in this moment, such as tourism-related stakeholders, fishery-related stakeholders, natural conservation, I don't know, NGOs, and put them together around the table to identify practical problems to develop such innovative methodologies to protect nature in coastal areas, and so to work towards local sustainable development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alberto, very much indeed. I think the third point, the creation of a local network, is probably important but difficult point to achieve, and represent the difficulties I also highlighted for SASPAS about the organizing and speaking with local actors at different levels, interested people, economic network, agency, permitting centers. And we proceed, and I asked to Tatiana Bakran to join us with for her moment, and after that we will pass to Dr. Brithel.
Yes, thank you very much. Can I start?
Sure.
Yes, okay. So I prepared a presentation in which I will try to be as fast as possible. There are many slides, but there are many photos, so you will see. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm associate professor at the Faculty of Science, Zagreb University. And my main expertise is actually ecology of Adriatic benthic habitats and the different impacts of them on them. And I'm also interested in some peculiar isolated habitats like marine caves. I worked a little bit on habitat mapping, marine habitat mapping, and I also work on biological indicators of mean sea level and their use in research of sea level fluctuations and assessment of impact of global change on them. I also work on sponges a little bit when I have some time. And if you are interested in my work, you have a few pages. If you just put Tatiana Bakran Petrizioli, you have me on ResearchGate, on Google Scholar, and then on our Croatian sites, but they are mostly in Croatian. But on ResearchGate and Google Scholar, you will find more. So I saw that also a colleague from Slovenia will address this part, so I will be very short. Adriatic is definitely a special part of Mediterranean Sea. It is microtidal, it is shallow, it is enclosed, and it is northernmost part of the Mediterranean. And of course, general direction of incoming sea currents, you have here a little sketch, brings also some climatic differences along Adriatic. So Northern Adriatic is especially vulnerable. It is the northernmost part of the Mediterranean, so this is also the origination of cold water, which is formed not last winter, but some winters when Northern Adriatic is cold. Then this cold water, which is the coldest and densest Mediterranean water, is slowly going down along the Adriatic towards the Ionian Sea. So geomorphological characteristic of our coast, it is eastern part of Adriatic. It is Dalmatian part of coast with a few rows of islands in front of the main coast, and it is karst. Karstic, formed in carbonate rocks, and what we see right now, it's actually very young, because 18,000 years ago, during last glaciation maximum, sea level was over 100 meters lower than today, and many karstic mountains, hills, with this flooding in last 18,000 years become islands. And of course, some riverine and aeolic sediment are overflown by the sea. So there are a certain very interesting submerged karst habitats, like different types of caves, vruljas, karstic estuaries along the Croatian coast, and many, many marine caves, even pits with bathyal characteristics, marine lakes, naked karst. So these are some of the very peculiar, interesting stuff. We found this carnivorous sponge in a coastal cave at depth only of 25 meters, and also some hexactinellid sponges. We were also collaborating with Italian colleagues on a few cruises with the Urania ship, which is not existing anymore. So there are very, very interesting, important and valuable deep sea communities, especially in front of Italian coast and also in front of Montenegrin coast on the other side of South Adriatic Pit. And all these habitats, including, of course, what Andrea says, Posidonia meadows and coralligenous habitats, are today very much under the impact of direct and indirect human impact, and they're endangered. So there are over-exploitation, habitat destruction, eutrophication, pollution, invasive species, and of course, global climate change, which reflects in rise of temperature. So marine ecosystem, what we see in our research in the Adriatic is definitely under the stress. We saw lowering of thermocline to depths below 50 meters and a long period of retention of this warm layer on these depths result with mortalities of long-living cold water organisms like gorgonians. We have, and we are all along the Adriatic suffering from them, very strong and frequent storms and sudden weather changes. We can see the speeding up of sea level rise, spreading of thermophilic, mostly allochthonous species towards north. And we, unfortunately, this change is also bringing prosperity to opportunistic organisms on the account of autochthonous species, invasive species, mostly right now. And the consequences are unfavorable for humans. This is something that I have to stress, because when we see the history or geological history on Earth, such catastrophic events or dying off of some species were not so unfrequent, but for us in our very short time, life time span, we are facing very problematic periods. So I have to say that I am still involved, because we started in 2016 with MERCES project, which is Horizon 2020 project, Marine Ecosystem Restoration in Changing European Seas. And this project is one of the first European projects focused on development of tools and solutions for restoration of degraded marine habitats. And in this project, we were involved in few work packages with development of protocols, transplantation and propagation of selected marine organisms, and monitoring of their recovery. So for us, targeted habitats were Coralligenous and Posidonia meadows. Some colleagues worked on deep sea habitats, and we dealt with a few species like Pinna nobilis, Paramuricea clavata, and of course, Spongia Plisina cavernicola and Posidonia oceanica. So we did a very, very successful transplantation of Pinna from Pula Harbor to Friuli National Park, because in Pula Harbor, this huge population was endangered by development of marina, and we did this in 2017. And we used that opportunity because we transplanted quite a number of pinnas. So we did a seagrass bivalves facilitation experiment. We did that also with the Italian colleagues from Ancona, and we get very nice results. We followed the bivalve survival, growth, and different other parameters of sediment and seagrass per se. We also tried, and this was also at the beginning very successful, transplantation of Posidonia oceanica. We did this with a novel approach with this besse structures, which are actually from starch, but they look like plastic, but they are biodegrading at the end. So we also, you can see here, this is under the sediment and this is above sediment. So we tried both possibilities. And we did also a propagation of red gorgonians and some facilitation experiments also. So we did that with the great success on Kirk Island. It is also in Northern Adriatic. That is Cape Sokol. So we did that in April 2018 on 35 depth. The gorgonians looked very nice, and we even had some other facilitation of growing of bryozoans and some other invertebrates. But in 2018, mucilaginous layers covered our gorgonians. And you can see on this picture that they were severely damaged. We also did some propagation of sponges of Aplyzina cavernicola, because Aplyzina cavernicola is a strictly protected species. So we did that, and this was very good. We did some transregional thermotolerance experiment with red gorgonia, and papers are in the final phase of writing about that. So we found very nice differences along the whole Mediterranean. There are some populations of red gorgonians that are a little bit more sensitive to temperature changes, and there are some that are a little bit less. So the interest is to see what are the possibilities to go further with that. So this is about Merce's project. And I have to stress that because I sent a little abstract to Andrea, and Andrea said, you are very pessimistic. And then we spoke here about that. And I think that I am not pessimistic, I'm realistic. Here on the picture, you can see one of the pinas that were transplanted to Friuli National Park in 2017. So you can see that these pina look very nice. You can even see along its border new growth. And we saw pinas in National Park in 2017 to spawn. Here you can see that fishes are eating the spawning product. But as you are probably most of you aware, the mass mortality of noble pen shell of Pinna nobilis, this is the emblematic Mediterranean endemic species, spread it throughout the whole Mediterranean in just 4 years. We witnessed it spreading along the eastern part of Adriatic last year. So from April 2019 to October 2019, you can see between these two yellow arrows, you can see that it spreaded during this warmer part of the year, it spreaded very, very fast. And this red arrow showed the position of Sholta Island, where on the open side of Sholta Island, on 50 meters of depth in 2019, it was 20 degrees Celsius. For those of you who know something about the geophysical and properties of Adriatic Sea, you will agree that this is really an extremely high temperature. And this wave of mass mortality started in autumn 2016. And this summer, 2020, it reached North Adriatic. And our very, very, very successful experiments with pinna transplanting actually were severely damaged. We witnessed the mass mortality over 90% in our experiment and in autochthonous pinna in National Park Friuli in mid-June. By now, I think almost all of the pinnas there are dead. So you can see our beautiful experiment with 5 pinnas in quadrat. They are all dead. So this is from June this year. And you can see some pinnas are already disappearing, because once when pinna die, then it fall down on the sediment, and gradually in some years the shell is completely broken and you cannot see it anymore. So this is just to show you how big and nice were those pinna that we found dead in June this year. And as a conclusion, I have to say that this mass mortality, which spread it throughout the whole areal of this species, is bringing pinna nobilis to verge of extinction in only 4 years. And this is my concluding remark. We have a beautiful legal legacy and very comprehensive legislation, conventions, everything for nature protection and conservation. But when it comes to quick implementation and reaction to such fast changes which we are witnessing in the Mediterranean, then unfortunately national and international institutions turn out to be too slow and incapable of reacting on time. So, and on the other hand, there is a pressure on scientists to provide solutions. Because when I asked, I said, there must be some funds that we should put in this saving of PINA. They said, oh, yes, there will be funds for solutions. But we don't know, for such emblematic species, we have problems to even keep it in aquarium because we haven't put enough research impact, research effort to actually know everything about these species, not to mention other species that are not so emblematic and they are maybe also disappearing. So I think that there will be no progress in marine life protection and conservation without changing approach from this bureaucratic, slow, too robust, to active and fast responses approach, which can save the species and habitats. So this is my personal opinion. So thank you very much. If you have some questions, I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Your presentation was full of stimulating points. At the beginning, you listed a number of impacts, if I remember well, general, direct, and indirect, which overlaps, which are added, to be added to the simple impacts I mentioned in my presentation, the impact of the anchoring and physical disturbance on the Posidonia and related habitats of the coast zone. Later, you were highlighting specific problems in a pessimistic way, as I stressed, or realistic, as you precised. Later, maybe I would like to hear with you, how do you, if and how do you match the problem of PINA, the disease, which the temperature increase, especially in the deep, in the depth. I don't know if there are some questions arising from the public here, or no? I tablet? Ah, sorry. No. Okay. So I would like to ask if Mitya, would you like to come to my place?
I will stay here.
Okay. So, please.
May I get?
Sure.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. And I would like first to thank to of course, organizers and all previous speakers for the, I believe, very important message, which is very much to the point to today's issue, which is protection of marine habitats. along coastal areas, and this is, of course, huge work ahead of us. As the last speaker, Tatiana, said, the things are going fast, very fast, and it's high time for the action, appropriate and efficient action. And this is what I will try to focus on. First, to introduce myself, I am a geographer working more than 30 years for the Ministry for Environment, dealing with the international agreements on the coast, land and sea. I, as a researcher, work also for the Institute for Geographers, so I'm very much trying to following the scientific results and trying to do my best on this bureaucratic level, national, transboundary and EU. So I will try to show you now in my presentation how we see this interaction or interface between the science and governance for the, let's say, to enhance the quality of the sea, which is, as my, let's say, my chairman said from the early beginning, it's extremely hard work. Or sometimes it looks almost impossible how this bureaucracy behaves. But this is reality. We are facing with this also in this, I hope this COVID and post-COVID situation will contribute to change this slow motion, or let's say to really work on a different and more efficient way. So I'm talking now here, as I said, on behalf of the Slovenian Ministry for Environment, and in the same time I am the coordinator of environmental pillar of Adriatic Union strategy together with the Bosnia representative Senat Oprašić, and I will try to report you about this process, or focusing of this joint process of very important European process, I believe, for the Adriatic Union to address today's topic. Don't be afraid, it's not long presentation, sorry. It's about science-based approach. We heard 3 presentations already. It's about coastal marine habitats and how to really focus on them when we are preparing measures to use these habitats for human needs. It's about green infrastructure. This is relatively new, let's say, terminus technicus for the developers, how to see environment when they are planning activities and our future. And it's about eco-connectivity, which is very known for those who are dealing with biodiversity and marine and coastal habitats. And mostly it's about the governance on all levels. This is central, I believe, message from my side, to improve the governance and our responsibility wherever we are, as citizens, users, or researchers, or let's say governmental officials in bureaucracy, to become efficient to improve our quality of life, or to improve or contribute to more healthy environment, at least in this post-COVID situation. I believe the message is clear now. We need healthy environment for us and for the future generation. And we are those who should turn the somehow right bottom, not to do it business as usual from now on again. So what we try to address from the early beginning in this Adriatic Union strategy is as environmental quality pillar. We do have the pillar of blue growth. This is, you know, about all economy. The pillar 2 is about connectivity, where the transport and energy are, and pillar 4 is sustainable tourism. All pillars should be connected, and we as environmental quality try to introduce to all pillars how important is now from pragmatic point of view, understand first and then implement importance of biodiversity, but now how? Via first to understand eco-connectivity into the planning of sustainable use of coastal and marine resources. And this is just very simplified picture, map, how we try to promote this idea to all, let's say, decision makers of all 4 pillars, to first to try to understand what is eco-connectivity on land, sea, and coastal areas, and to think about when they are planning development. The second is let's say, we are now in this region of the North Adriatic in Trieste Bay. I try to simplify it very much for all how it looks, this transaction from karstic, as the colleague Tatiana said, dynamic plateau of the Eastern Adriatic and karstic water, problems and solutions which are very sensitive to coastal and marine, using this transaction, let's say from here or Capodistria to Grado, how it looks like. We are very all in this eco-region of Northern Adriatic and Adriatic eco-region as well. I would like to remind all of us that in bureaucratic language and scientific language, here it's very important, I would say, success, that European Commission legislation said very clearly, management unit for all Adriatic countries is Adriatic eco-region. Do your best to manage it properly. This is very simplified language of Water and Marine Framework Directive. This is our legislation. And this is how it's mentioned here, how fragmented is this approach. You can see on those, let's say, silos, which are ahead of this, let's say, landscape profile among, let's say, Slovenian and Italian side, respecting or also mentioning some economic activities as ports are, as transport on coast and land, and all these interactions, and also somehow mentioning or showing the Posidonia meadows, let's say coastal important habitats we heard a lot of, and let's say fish stocks, which should be also here and healthy, and also thinking about the biodiversity and the role of this. This is the picture as it looks like, fragmented but real. Now the conflicts and degradation are unfortunately the case. And we heard also from the last speaker what the results are, not very optimistic. And where the solution is, how we see it, in really enhanced governance for not to work in silos, thinking and acting among the all levels, local, national, transboundary EU, but really address those issues with responsibility, with knowledge-based approach. Of course, it's first point, and then, of course, cooperation and action, which should be proactive. For what? For healthy coast, healthy marine environment, for, of course, healthy future of our and, I believe, next generation. This is what we are addressing. Using the lesson learned from this post-COVID, we hope, situation for recovery and to enhance resilience. how is this possible to really think about first pressure and impacts which we are producing, and how to minimize those pressure and impacts on the coastal and marine environment. We try to simplify it again, those eco-connectivity, let's say, corridors, in corridors between Alpine, Adriatic and Dinaric for those who are planning our future with special plans. And of course, if I'm going back, marine special plans are new dimension, and they should be prepared and ready in 1991 and 21. This is next year. And what and who is doing with, you can ask your authorities and how they are using your results when they are planning, you know, the future use of coastal areas and marine areas. This is serious issue. Who is doing that, how they are doing, and what they are respecting. And what is the main issue when they are planning the, let's say, and zoning the sea and coast for the future development. For tourist activities, fishery, industry, energy, and so on. This is really, really intensive process which is going on in each country. And the first question for discussion maybe is how the coordination among the sectors for this very important topic or task is going on the national level, and then how this coordination is going on transboundary level. Just asking for the first step in this Trieste Bay between Italy, Slovenia and Croatia. I would really be happy to get answer from here, from the floor, or for the other speakers, how the feeling is about this on their level, or personal, or even institutional. Okay, I will continue. This is where we see the future, or how it's not just to stop the development. Some skeptics or, you know, those pessimists are trying to tell that environment or environmentalists always wants to stop development. No, it's opposite. We believe this research about to take seriously ecosystem services and goods, it's something what economy and economists should recognize when they are planning in very concrete local environment the future with physical plans of coastal again and marine special planning, and of course river basin or special plans. This is how it's possible. Here are some cases in Slovenia. It's possible to reduce pressure and impacts in the same time get new jobs, for example, green jobs, and to enhance the attractive of the coast with these, let's say, green areas for better quality of tourism, more recreational, but on the other hand, you can get also higher resilience to the negative climate change impacts, more space for the water, more space for biodiversity, and of course, you can combine it with the human activities on proper or new way to minimize negative impact of the climate change and degradation of, let's say, human activities, negative pressure and impacts, and mitigate this with very concrete measures. We propose 3 projects in Adriatic-Ionian region, which are of course international for all Adriatic countries to cooperate for this issue on a transparent way in this Adriatic-Ionian process, addressing the Adrian funds, and this is using the integrated coastal zone management and marine special planning as a tool to minimize pressure and impacts. Of course, thinking on this eco-connectivity, connecting existing protected areas and coast, land and sea, and establishing network of protected areas and enhance this, let's say, issue when we are planning our future. For example, this is the project which is, of course, prepared and proposed for financing. Its support behind, at least in our TSG, but we hope it will become, of course, not just pilot project, but it should be as much as possible enhanced, just because, as I said, the deadline to produce those marine special planning plans is next year. So it's no more time. It's time to act, to get these issues into not just paper, but also into the measures which should become, of course, operational on the national and local levels. So I hope that the message how to enhance this process should be also from this podium to all countries, the European Commission, that we are prepared and aware to contribute to this with the science, with all responsible stakeholders in all countries, and with the European process, which is for the eco-region of Adriatic and eco-region of Ionian, and we together are stronger and to be more efficient. The second project is also very much to close to first idea to include these endangered species and areas to marine special planning. You can go into details. I will slowly finish. And the last one is project which addressing very much known pressure and impacts from the marine transport, not just soil pollution, but pollution also from with the chemicals and ballast water, and to, of course, prepare the management plan to reduce pressure and impacts from marine transport, and of course minimize impacts on marine and coastal biodiversity. With these projects prepared for all Adriatic Ionian countries, we believe that we did our job in the first step. Now it's up to the European Commission and other bodies to approve this and start with the action as soon as possible, not to wait another few years or even more to at least somehow address this issue again. But the things are happening, as we heard already, very fast and now. And this is for terrestrial habitats, of course, the project which is very much connected with the green corridors and blue corridors. Of course, this is the synergy, as you know, as biologists, which we should respect. And this is just invitation that we do have our very, I would say, ambitious today workshop with the title European Green Deal and Western Balkan in Isola in September, very 20 to 21st, very soon. The focus is exclusively or very much on the implementation EU biodiversity strategy and recovery after post-COVID situation. And of course, we will try to promote, I hope, also messages from this meeting and your contribution also in this workshop. And of course, you are all very welcome to contribute, and I hope together we are stronger and more efficient. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Thank you very much, Mitya. And thanks to your contribution and to Tatiana's as well, because in respect to our applied, simple work of a project we presented before, the perspective you have added is very important. And your presentation reflects and well integrates, in my opinion, some of our hidden thoughts on the contradiction between use and conservation of the coastal zone. In this sense, if I could, with difficulty, synthesize approaching the end of the session with some worried but realistic opinions, I would like to say four things, consisting in four difficulties. One is the difficulty in the capacity of activation and acting in response to little or large critical problem and disease, like Tatiana's stressed before, at least speaking at Adriatic level, without going so far. The second is difficulties in integration and collaboration of institutes to work especially on applied research in the pragmatic sense. Third, the distance of agency and government bodies from academic world when even with maybe small companies, big or small companies, working on the application level of project concerning the seas, always to remain in our field. Fourth and last, the lack of conceptual connectivity between the system of conservation network and the operational managements we need to implement even simple projects. Again, this from the Tatiana's highlights. Obviously, these 4 points are very rough, and just looking to make some integration of the different works we presented today, because the issues were many and very spread. I think we don't have questions from far away. If Tatiana, Alberto want to say something, I made a question to Tatiana, if I remember, about the temperature. And Alberto, please, if you want to say something, because we have 6 minutes.
Yeah, I can tell you, I can answer your question. What we are trying to do now, we put some collectors for pinna larvae, if that will be possible to obtain. And the aquarium in Pula is very actively participating in keeping some of the pinnas in systems in which the water is filtered. So we are now in a state to trying to find some alive pinnas, because we are getting some information that there are some pinnas from place to place, at least in the Croatian Adriatic, that are still alive. Unfortunately, they are not like a big populations. There are only a few individuals. So the question still is open if these few alive individuals will be able to reproduce. But we are trying. Now there are some actions in which some of the public institutions for nature protections are involved, especially those in like in Split area, in Rijeka area, in Dubrovnik area, where they collect this information and they try to raise public awareness. But the problem with citizen science turned out to be that people are not aware that if pinnas are still pointing up, they could be dead. So very often we get information from public, oh, we saw some pinnas, they are standing there. But when you ask them, did you check properly? Then it turned out to be that these are dead. So this is, there are many problems. I am not very optimistic that Pina could survive. We could face Pina extinction on the level of Mediterranean, we could. But the time will show, because now how autumn is coming up, the progression of this parasite and mycobacterium, which are involved in the Pina dying off, are a little bit less with the lowering of sea temperature. The illness, the mortality is a little bit slower. So maybe
Okay.
we could find some
Thank you.
alive Pinas. I don't know if I answer your question, so please.
Yeah, thank you. With the approach of the citizen science, I can only say a hope word, telling that in the eastern coasts there are sparse living individuals. And another interesting thing is that in Venice Lagoon, the situation for the moment is that of a very strong living population.
Yeah.
But we have to think that we are, for the moment, in a different context from a morphological and hydraulic point of view. But I know that in the last months, there's a program of the Council for Research, National Council of Research of the Station of Venice, in promoting a campaign addressed to the citizen science to ask information about the state of Pina. And your question, your idea to specify how to realize if Pina is dead or not is important to stress the fact that maybe people just have a look and say, okay, Pina is there, but it's not enough. Thank you. Alberto, I don't know if you want to say something, because we have 3 minutes.
Yeah, something completely different, actually, that I was thinking when looking at my presentation and your presentation, which will focus on, very punctual projects. And
sure.
The other presentation, which was more large scale.
Was made on purpose.
Yeah, and this was something I was speaking with you yesterday, I think. The limits and advantages of an approach based on projects, such as the Interreg projects we are working in. I was thinking that these projects are actually a wonderful chance to test, to answer innovative questions using innovative methods and building innovative partnerships, because it's really difficult to bring together government bodies, research institutes, local stakeholders. This project is actually a unique chance, in my opinion, to do such a thing that otherwise would be impossible, very, very difficult to do. On the other hand, these projects have limitations, in my opinion. One we were speaking about is bureaucracies. You have a very short time to do administration procedures, to do authorization procedure, to solve practical problems. So in the end, you're left with short time to answer your questions. And also these projects are short again, so you have no guarantee that the results that are obtaining this project will be adopted in the long term. And this is an issue in itself, and also because it reduces your credibility in front of stakeholders, in my opinion. And last, again, because these projects are short, you cannot really implement those adaptive, flexible management approaches, which are what is really needed structurally in coastal management. So that's really an issue, because on the one hand, you need to be flexible, but you can't do that in a very short time when application forms and proposals
Alberto,
are really well defined.
I have to stop you, but thanks again. I think at least we are targeting well, even if we have different opinions, was not bad. Okay, thank you, because we are free to 1 second. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.